Hello there, and welcome to Murder Most British. I'm Zach, the American half, which means I'm the one who says trash can.
Hey, and I'm Rachel, the British half, and I'm the one who has to keep reminding him it's a bin. Especially now that he's in England. It's a bin.
No, trash can.
It's a bin.
Is where you put the trash.
I'm sure a lot of people agree with me that it's a bin.
Either way you say it, this story is about someone who put that in very grim use.
Well, today we're taking you to a village in southeast of England to tell you the story of Butcher of Suburbia, Scott Paterson.
So, in the Bedford village of Fairfield, people don't really lock their doors. But in November 2023, a woman known as the Queen of Fairfield vanished. And the story her lodger told would unravel everything. At first, his explanation sounded simple enough. Kind of account you might accept in a place where trust is second nature. But as days turned into weeks, messages appeared that didn't sound like her, and details surfaced that didn't quite fit. What began as a missing persons case in one of the country's quietest communities soon revealed itself to be something far darker.
Well, Fairfield, a modern development built around restored Victorian buildings, had long enjoyed a reputation as one of Bedfordshire's safest corners. Residents spoke of knowing their neighbours by name, stopping in the street for long conversations, and sharing news before it ever reached the parish notice board. It's like having a huge family. How can someone be missing? One local asked, in disbelief, in a place where crime was something that happened elsewhere. Annette Smith was part of the fabric of daily life.
At 74, Annette was a familiar figure in West Wing Fairfield Park, once part of a Victorian asylum, but now a sought-after residential area. Friends described her as approachable and quick to help, whether feeding a neighbor's pet, running an errand, or offering a listening ear. She had a natural instinct for caring for others. One neighbor, Luke, remembered how she quietly stepped in to help him when he was learning to drive. Quote, "She put the money toward my driving lessons. I passed 2 months later."
She was also fiercely independent. She wouldn't be told what to do by anyone, Luke recalled. That spirit showed in her style, the convertible she once drove, the spontaneous outings, the home decorated to her own taste rather than fashion. Yet independence was paired with warmth. Friends recalled evenings in her kitchen, meals that stretched late, Rod Stewart playing in the background, conversations flowing over glasses of wine.
Her stepfamily described her as dependable and loyal, someone who never hesitated to help. Annette's stepfamily described her as a constant presence in their lives, someone they could always depend on. Her stepson recalled how, when trains only took him part of the way, she would drive out to meet him without complaint, no matter the distance. It was a small act that spoke volumes about her willingness to put others first. Even after the breakdown of her marriage, Annette remained rooted in Fairfield, keeping her routines and her ties to the community.
Well, Scott Paterson first became part of her household in 2014. She was in her mid-60s. He was in his mid-30s. There was no formal arrangement or rent being paid. Her friends said that they seemed to get along immediately, sharing meals, errands, and daily life. They were much like a mother and son. They had a fantastic relationship, one neighbour recalled. Over the years, Paterson became a familiar face in Fairfield, often seen alongside Annette.
Paterson's background was in care work, later in a farm shop where he picked up some butchery skills. People described him as personable, easy to get along with, someone who fitted into Annette's world. When Annette suffered a stroke several years into his stay, Paterson stepped in to help with practical tasks around the home. To friends, it looked like a natural extension of the trust between them.
Financial pressures began to weigh. For years, Annette's estranged husband had continued to pay certain bills, including her credit card. But when his business closed, that support ended. Selling her home was raised as a possibility, an idea Annette resisted. Friends remembered how distressed she became at the thought of leaving Fairfield, where she had lived for so long.
I'd get that. Like, you don't want to just pick up and leave just the place you've been for years and years, like decades probably, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think a lot of people make their life somewhere. And, you know, I think, especially British, I think I don't know about Americans, but we don't tend to like to move. It's stressful. You do make your home your place and yeah.
Yeah, just like you wouldn't want to just give all that up and pick up and move. That's pretty horrible, And I'd be like, yeah, we'll do something. We'll figure it out, But still, nothing outwardly unusual was seen in the months before November 2023. Annette's routines and social life continued. Visitors saw no sign of conflict. By early November, she remained a constant presence in the village, while Paterson continued living in her home. Everything appeared normal.
Then, without warning, the pattern broke. By mid-November, Annette Smith was no longer seen in Fairfield, not by friends, neighbours, or even family. And the only account of her final movements would come from the man who lived under her roof for nearly a decade. Pat, one of Annette's closest friends, became concerned when she could no longer reach her. Messages received no reply, and attempts to visit were met with silence. By the middle of the week, Pat had decided to stop by her house. Inside, she found an unsettling scene. The bed was neatly made, but there was no personal belongings where there should have been. All the cabinets were empty of her personal bits and pieces, Pat had recalled. Items that Annette used every day, toiletries, photographs, favourite ornaments, they were all gone.
Scott was still at the property, and when spoken to about her absence, he appeared calm. He told Pat that Annette had gone away with a friend and would be back in a few days. There was no mention of where she'd gone, who she was with, or why she had left so suddenly.
Friends were unsettled, but in the first days, there was still hope that Annette might come back through her front door. 2 weeks later, that hope was met with something else, an email. On the 28th of November, Pat received a short message from Annette's account. It read, "I'm okay, just pissed off about the house. Need to be away from it all at the moment." There was no greeting, no detail of her location, and no indication of when she would be back.
That'd be really weird. Like one of our friends or whatever just whoop, disappeared.
I mean, I've thought about it a few times, if I'm going to be honest, I mean, how amazing would it be, though, just to up and go? Nobody knows where you are. Like, you just don't answer to nobody. Don't tell nobody nothing. You just go up and do your own thing.
But that's when the concern comes in. That's when they'd be like, we need to call the police because
this is out of the norm. Yeah.
Yeah.
I get that, but imagine it, though.
But when you're corresponding with people and that through emails, you kind of get who they are, what their cadence is, and how they...
It's routines, isn't it? And I think if it's something that is out of a routine and the norm, then yeah, the worry would set in.
Yeah, like my grandmother, she had like pen pals and stuff, and she'd email back and forth. And they would know, I would think, like the way she writes letters or writes emails, but that's the way she would have done it. And they would go, well, that's not how she talks, or that's not how she writes things. That's not the same. And it would put up them red flags. But then they're like, well, Scott said that she's fine. She just went away for a few days, but then it's been a couple of weeks. And then she gets this email that says, I just needed to get away. Really, I've been like, no, there's something wrong.
Yeah, I agree.
And just like I said, the message didn't sound like her to her friends. She was someone who usually asked after people's health, added personal notes, or made arrangements to meet. This was just brief and vague, but it also was the first direct contact anyone had received since her disappearance, and it carried her name.
Weeks later in December, another friend received a Moonpig birthday card ordered online and signed in Annette's name. "Promise I'll be in touch soon," the message read, followed by a row of kisses. The card gave no return address, and no one could recall Annette sending cards through that service before.
Despite these signs of activity, not one person in Fairfield has seen Annette in person since mid-November. She had not been spotted at the shops, or walking her dogs, or visiting friends. No one had spoken to her on the phone.
By Christmas, her absence was total. A woman known for her regular routines and daily contact with friends had been gone for more than a month. The only traces of her were an email, a birthday card, and the account given by Scott about leaving her with somebody.
After Annette was last seen, Scott remained in the house. Visitors found him there, answering the door and speaking as though nothing was out of place. When asked He maintained that she had left voluntarily, telling people she had gone away with a friend and could be back in a few days. But that only lasts so long, really. You say, oh, she'll be back in a few days. A few weeks go by. Well, back in a few days. Weeks go by.
I mean, especially when, these people are thinking, it's been a month now. Like, I thought she was back in a few days and it's been a month. When, why has she not contacted us? Why is it just she's contacting Scott and only Scott? Strange.
And in this day and age, you text. Everybody's texting or calling or whatever, and just nothing. Like, what did she do? Throw her phone off a cliff? Like, the way we are now with texting and shit. Like, that's really strange to someone just to go dark.
In conversations with police and neighbours, Paterson described the person who had allegedly collected Annette from the house. She was, he said, a white woman with short grey hair, plumpish but not fat. It was the only description he could provide. He said he had never seen her before and did not know her name. The lack of information made it impossible for others to verify the encounter or identify the woman he claimed had taken her away.
As the weeks passed, without any physical sighting of Annette, Paterson's behavior drew mixed reactions. Some saw him appearing upset and emotional. Others found him calm and composed. One friend recalled him breaking down into tears, telling her, "I don't know what I've done." In the same breath, he would insist he had no idea where Annette was.
Well, in December, Paterson came to the police attention in unrelated circumstances. He was stopped while driving one morning and admitted to having consumed alcohol shortly before getting behind the wheel. Officers recorded that he had a bottle of vodka in the passenger seat. He told them he had drunk about that much vodka, roughly 10 minutes earlier. The stop led to his arrest on suspicion of driving while under the influence.
Yeah, that much vodka. That's like 2-3 shots, I don't take a few shots before jumping in.
I just had a pinch of vodka, officer. It was only this much.
Like it's a normal thing to just do a couple shots. Do a couple shots before I get in behind the wheel. Yeah.
Terrible. I don't like drink drivers.
Nope, me neither. The incident was noted by those who had known him for years as being out of character. While it was not directly connected to Annette's disappearance, it added to the picture of his behavior during the period she was missing.
Well, from the perspective of the community, the situation was increasingly out of step with life in Fairfield. As one officer later remarked, "It's unusual for someone like her to go missing. Circumstances are unusual. The woman who had been an active and visible part of the village's life was now entirely absent."
On the 10th of January 2024, a missing person report was made. In the call to police, the caller described Annette as having, quote, gone off with a total stranger. The words were striking. In a community where everyone claimed to know each other by name, no further information was provided about this stranger, other than Scott's account. There was no name, no address, and no means of contact.
Well, with no confirmed sightings of Annette Smith and no contact beyond a handful of brief messages, the inquiry was quickly escalated from the first responding officers to Bedfordshire Police's dedicated missing persons unit. From there, detectives began a structured review, collating all known facts, re-interviewing witnesses, and checking timelines for gaps and inconsistencies.
So, as the police do, they began building a complete timeline. They spoke to friends, neighbours, and anyone who had any contact with Annette in the weeks before she was last seen. Each account was recorded and compared, looking for inconsistencies and contradictions. The aim was to establish whether she had left willingly or was staying somewhere or had been prevented from returning.
Specialist Search Officer Ben Thomas was assigned to examine Annette's home. As he later explained, there appears to be no reason why she has gone missing. That makes it even more intriguing. The property, a substantial converted building in Fairfield, was entered and every room was checked and items were photographed before anything was moved.
The house was massive. It was so beautiful. And as they showed video of it going through, I was like, wow, this is amazing. No, you're like
the garden as well. The garden was huge.
Yeah, that would be
lovely place for her to run her dogs around.
And just, I could see why she was like, nah, I ain't giving this up. It's just such a beautiful, unique place.
Yeah. It looks lovely.
Inside, the search team noted clothing still in the wardrobes and drawers, suggesting that Annette had not packed for a long trip. In the kitchen, cups and plates were in their usual places. On a desk, there were stacks of paperwork, much of it relating to divorce proceedings and financial matters. Several envelopes of unopened mail were also found, some postmarked after the date she was last seen.
Investigators considered the layout of the house and its position within the community. Fairfield streets were covered by a network of CCTV cameras at key points, including entrances to the estate and some public areas. If Annette had left by car, officers expected to find a record of the vehicle. Yet a review of the available footage showed no images of her, nor of the woman described as having collected her.
The absence of visual evidence was matched by the absence of witnesses. Despite the close-knit nature of Fairfield, no one had seen a stranger arrive at Annette's home, and no one could confirm the account of her departure. Officers checked neighboring properties to see if private security cameras might have captured any relevant footage, but nothing emerged. And that's small town living right there. You're like, what's that neighbor doing? What are they doing out there? People rubbernecking, you know?
Yeah, I'm like that, looking out the window, seeing what everyone's doing.
They must be taking something to the dump.
Yeah, like earlier, guy was taking the rubbish out to his car. I was like, oh, he's going to the dump.
But if the guy was just missing, it's like, well, I haven't seen that guy in a couple of weeks. You know, you pick up on these things.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, for the police to not find anything on the security cameras as well is just a bit odd.
Yeah, I would just be like, that's really weird that you can't catch her at some point in a car somewhere.
Well, the Missing Persons Unit continued to gather background information, documenting Annette's routines, health, and personal circumstances. Friends described her as sociable and engaged with the community, who was regularly seen walking her dogs or meeting others for coffee. Her pattern of life had been consistent for years, which made her sudden absence stand out all the more.
By the time the unit had completed their first phase of work, they had a growing file of interviews, search notes, and documentary evidence. Yet the central questions, where Annette was, why she had left, and who was she with, remained unanswered. The lack of physical sightings and corroborating evidence meant the case could not remain within the remit of missing persons procedures alone.
Well, on the 22nd of December 2023, after weeks of inquiries had failed to locate her, the decision was made to refer the matter to Bedfordshire Police's Major Crime Unit, a team with the resources and experience to handle complex high-risk cases. The referral marked a turning point. While the official position was to keep an open mind, the absence of any verifiable sign that Annette had left Fairfield alive brought a new urgency to the investigation.
Once the Major Crime Unit took over, attention turned to the messages and cards that had appeared after Annette was last seen. Detectives obtained the transaction records for the Moonpig card sent to one of her friends and the email sent to Pat. Both had been created and sent using accounts in Annette's name. Every time I read Moonpig, I'm like, moonpig.com.
It's like, go compare.
Yeah,
it just gets stuck in your brain.
Those catchy tunes. Moonpig.com.
Moonpig.com. Oh dear. Well, anyway, with Digital's forensic specialists, the team traced the internet activity linked to those accounts. The Moonpig orders were placed on the 2nd and 19th of December 2023. The email had been sent on the 28th of November. Each action was linked to the same IP address, the one assigned to Annette's house in Fairfield at the time of the transactions. Major problem.
Major red flag right there.
Checked her house, she weren't there. So who's buying these?
The finding was decisive. If we're putting Scott at the location, it's got to be him, one officer remarked when the results came back. The activity took place weeks after Annette had been seen alive. Given the absence of any evidence that she had returned home or anything like that, the detectives concluded that the messages could not have come from her.
No, they couldn't. I mean, surely, had she have gone home and, Scott would have said, oh, or her neighbours, they would have seen her, or so.
Neighbours would have seen, be like, oh, hey, Annette's back.
Exactly.
would have went over for a coffee and a chin wag. Say, where you been?
Yeah. What the hell's happened? Why did you just take off like that? So, yeah, it's very, very suspicious. Well, the IP address evidence became the tipping point for a major shift in the investigation. The case was now treated as a suspected homicide, with Paterson identified as the primary suspect. Detectives prepared a warrant to search the property in Fairfield again, this time with the authority to seize electronic devices, documents, and any other potential evidence.
As detectives were building the IP address evidence, they were building on more as well, and getting a better picture of Scott Paterson's activities. Financial inquiries revealed transactions with the postal gold buying firm Cash for Gold.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah, Cash for Gold.
Send you a leaflet through the door, didn't they?
We'll buy all your gold.
Yeah.
Well, that company records showed that 2 consignments of jewelry had been posted to them by Paterson personally. The first was received on the 22nd of October of 2023, and the second on the 11th of November 2023.
For investigators, the Cash for Gold records were clear indicators of control and intent. The sales showed Paterson benefiting financially both before and immediately after Annette's disappearance, supporting the Crown's case that Scott's actions were premeditated. Alongside digital evidence and staged communications, the jewellery transactions became one of the most crucial strands tying Paterson to the exploitation and concealment that followed her disappearance.
On the 30th of April 2024, the arrest and search warrants were executed. Uniformed officers and plainclothes detectives arrived together. Paterson was at the property, and the lead officer informed him of the warrant before delivering the formal words of arrest. Scott, I'm arresting you on suspicion of the murder of Annette Smith. Paterson confirmed his name and date of birth and was taken into custody while the search team began their work inside the house.
As part of the arrest procedure, detectives reviewed Paterson's background. Records confirmed that he had no previous convictions and no known history of violence. His career history showed a progression from care worker to care manager in children's homes before leaving the sector in 2010. In later police interviews, it was noted that he had described his departure as a redundancy, but former colleagues had suggested he left under a cloud. After that, he worked at a farm shop, learning butchery skills from experienced staff.
With Paterson in custody, the focus would shift from finding Annette to proving what had happened to her, and establishing how the man who had lived with her for nearly a decade had come to be accused of her murder.
When detectives finally sat Scott Paterson down in the interview room, they already had a clear picture forming. The Moonpig card and email traced back to Annette's own Wi-Fi network meant someone in her house had sent them, and only Paterson was there.
Questions began with Annette's health and routine. Paterson described a woman very different to the one neighbors had painted for officers. She stayed in bed most of the time, he told them, suggesting she lacked the energy and rarely left the house. He implied that her days were spent resting, that her independence had waned.
Pressed on when he had last seen her, Paterson's answers shifted. At first he said Annette had left with a woman who came to collect her, a stranger he'd struggled to describe. He could not give a name, a vehicle registration, or even the precise day of the supposed departure. Officers reminded him that Fairfield's CCTV network had covered the entrances and exits to the estate. If a car had parked up, there should have been footage of Annette. None existed.
The longer the interview went on, the more contradictions emerged. He could not account for why Annette had left without her clothing, medication, or personal belongings. He could not explain why no neighbor had seen her depart. He returned again and again to vague suggestions that she simply needed time away. Each answer only highlighted the absence of verifiable details.
That's when detectives turned to the messages received after Annette's disappearance. Paterson insisted that Annette had dictated an email to him, which he then sent on her behalf. Later, he conceded that he had written it himself. He admitted the Moonpig birthday card, which had reassured a friend that she was okay and would be in touch, was also his work. Asked why he had done this, he faltered. "I don't know what I've done," he said at one point.
By the close of the first interview, investigators had heard Paterson acknowledge sending the false communications in Annette's name, inventing a woman who never existed, and presenting a version of her daily life at odds with every independent witness. The interview had not produced a confession, but it revealed a narrative that simply did not fit the facts.
Well, when detectives resumed the questioning, they finally pressed Scott Paterson beyond the fiction of the mystery woman. He admitted that Annette Smith had never left Fairfield alive. His account shifted from invention to confession, and for the first time he described what had really happened inside her home.
Yeah, that's all it takes. You just keep saying, well, that don't make sense, buddy. I've got this. I've got this. I've got this as evidence. Your story is not matching up, bud.
Exactly. With all the inconsistencies, the police will be like, this is not the truth, clearly, because you keep flitting from one story to another.
And it's always vague. There's no details. There's nothing like that. And they're just like chipping away at him. Like, nope, wrong.
Yeah.
You're wrong. This is wrong.
They cracked him easily by the sounds of it. He just gave in and said, right, well, I'll, tell you what happened.
Well, according to Paterson, the roots of the crime lay in his role as Annette's carer. He had been heavily involved in looking after her during her recovery. Though she had regained independence, Paterson told police he felt increasingly defined by the role. He described himself as trapped, unable to see a future that did not involve caring for her, and unable to imagine leaving without losing the security of the home he shared with her. Quote, I didn't see another way out. So because he's not paying rent and all that, so he's got that sort of sweet deal in a sense. Like,
it's too cushy where he was.
Yeah, I can't, in a big, beautiful house and this nice lady and it's not charging him rent and he can have this bit of extra money. I mean, gosh, the amount of money he would spend on rent for a place like that would be astronomical.
Yeah, would it? Yeah, it would nowadays.
Well, it wasn't too far long ago. It's 2024. Nowadays, it's only been a year.
Feels like 10 since 2024. Anyway, he said that the decision had been weighing on him for weeks. He began to plan quietly, choosing a method and a moment when he thought that the act could be carried out without interruption. He told detectives that he knew she would be most vulnerable when she was asleep, and that was when he resolved to strike.
Like a crocodile waiting for that, that's what I thought of. It's just like they're waiting in the water for the perfect time. Just a little crocodile.
I would have chose a cobra snake. I mean, it's good that they're getting the start of the truth coming out. This case is crazy.
Well, on the 8th of November 2023, Paterson waited until Annette had gone to bed. He entered her room while she slept and pressed a pillow over her face. He told the investigators that it was quiet, that she never woke properly, and that there was no prolonged struggle. The act was deliberate, not impulsive. He had entered her bedroom intending to kill her, and he carried it out.
Well, after she was dead, Paterson remained inside the house. He told officers he sat drinking vodka, staring into space, and trying to work out his next step. The body, he said, was now a practical problem that he had to deal with. The next morning, he rolled Annette's body in a large blanket and left her in the bathroom, where she remained for several days. On the 14th of November, with an estate agent due to photograph the house, he moved her into the cupboard under the stairs to keep her hidden.
Yeah, all I could think of is this ruins Harry Potter for me. Cupboard under the stairs. Like, because I always think whimsical, and he sees, the letters and
I mean, what was he going to do? They were obviously going to go through with selling the house, so they had the estate agent due.
What if they
would have opened the cupboard? I mean, how would he have known that they? Maybe he'll just say, "Sorry, I haven't got a key for this."
We need to get a picture of the storage under the stairs, and it's like there's stuff in there.
Horrendous.
Like, that's awful.
What an awful man.
Well, Paterson explained that in early January, weeks after the murder, he drew on his skills he had learned during his time at the farm shop. Though he had no formal training as a butcher, he had spent months preparing meat and had a working knowledge of how to cut through joints. Those skills, he told detectives, became the basis for what he did next. Inside Annette's home, he began the process of dismemberment.
God, how horrific. Poor woman.
But how do you get in that mindset?
I just don't know. I don't know whether, the psychological side of people being able to do things like that, it boggles my mind.
At that point, she's been dead weeks. She's been rotting.
Poor lady.
Yep. And then it's the smell and all that. And she's just been stuffed in a cupboard under the stairs. It's just
no respect for her. He's been with her for 10 years and set aside it being a premeditated act, intentionally killing her. To disrespect her like that, it's just, I just can't get my head around it.
Yeah, and to do those things in her home that she loved, that's just horrific.
Well, he did describe the process as clinical, broken into stages and carried out over a period of couple of weeks. He took weeks, not hours, he admitted. I'd stop, have a drink, leave it, then start again. I couldn't do it all at once. He would drink vodka between sessions, trying to numb himself before going back into the room to continue.
So he started with the lower limbs. Quote, I started with the feet, noting that the decision was practical. It was the simplest way to begin reducing the body into smaller, manageable sections that could be bagged. Once the feet were removed, he removed the hands, then telling detectives that these were comparatively easier but still hard, but I knew I had to keep going.
When it came to Annette's head, Paterson admitted that he struggled. He did not attempt it all in one go. It took me a few goes to do the head, he confessed. I kept stopping, drinking, going back to it. It wasn't quick. The process, he explained, was physically demanding and psychologically draining. At one point, he left the task unfinished overnight, returning to it the next day.
I would say that would be really tough to look that person in the face as you're cutting their head off. That's so sick.
Well, yeah, I think from the research, he ended up covering her head because he just couldn't, he says that he couldn't do it.
Well, I just don't know how you could do that to somebody that you obviously cared for. It's so insane.
Shocking. Absolutely shocking.
Well, Paterson confirmed to the detectives that by the end, he had divided Annette's body into 10 separate pieces. He described lining them up as he went, each one wrapped in bags. He said he double-bagged the parts to reduce any chance of detection.
Paterson used knives from Annette's own kitchen, the same utensils that she had used for cooking meals in happier times. He placed the sections into ordinary household bin bags, which he said he had ready in the house. Each part was wrapped separately, the bags sealed and left inside the property while he worked out how and when to remove them.
Throughout his account, Paterson referred to the dismemberment in the language of logistics. He spoke of it as in practical exercise rather than an emotional ordeal. Quote, it was about dealing with it, he told the officers. Quote, there was just no other way. His words reveal little sense of horror, but instead a focus on the mechanics of the act and the problem it was meant to solve, ensuring Annette's body could be removed from the house without attracting attention. Yeah, so he's not thinking, oh, this is my wonderful lady that I've been hanging out with for almost 10 years. I need to figure out how to cut this body up and get rid of it before I get caught.
Yeah, he sounds like he's definitely tried so hard to kind of disassociate himself with what he's doing. He knows he's planning that, yes, I have to do this. So he's dissociating any sort of emotional and connection, attachment to Annette. This is just a horrendous case. Horrendous.
Yeah, how he can just block it out like it's nothing. Like it's just another day at the butchery shop. You know, I've got to chop up these joints and that and just not think that it's a person.
Well, until he got to obviously her head, he just definitely disassociated. Well, by the time he had finished, Annette Smith, who had been at the centre of Fairfield's social fabric, known for her hospitality and generosity, had been reduced to 10 bin bags lined up for disposal. Paterson admitted that they remained in the house for a short time while he decided how best to scatter them. But the act of cutting them into smaller pieces was deliberate. It meant he could move them without anyone noticing. His plan was to spread the bags across public bins in Letchworth, so that once the bins were collected and sent to landfill, it would never be traced back to him.
Paterson told detectives he disposed of Annette's remains in stages, loading small batches into bags, into his car, and driving them to nearby Letchworth. Public bins, he explained, were ordinary and overlooked. Quote, "You put it in a normal bin. No one looks twice." To avoid suspicion, he spread the disposals across different days and locations, making sure no single bin contained too much. His reasoning was blunt. Once bins were collected, it's gone forever.
He was specific about some of the sites. Among the bins he used were those near the small Tesco's and Lidl in Letchworth, everyday shops where he believed his actions would blend in with routine activity. The method, he admitted, was chosen to ensure that even if something was found, it would never form a complete body.
How absolutely horrific is that? That your friend, you've chopped them up and you're just throwing them in trash cans or bins. Like,
it makes you think like, oh my God, you don't know who's walking around you and what they're doing, Like, for me, I just imagine that we're going about our daily lives and someone's going about the same town as you, walk past you with a body part and just dumping it in a bin. That's just horrendous.
After I was researching this, I would be in town or something, and I'd see someone put a bag in a bin, and I just thought, is that a body part? It just made you think differently. You're like, oh my gosh, how crazy is it? You just don't think. You're walking along, you see someone throw a bag in a bin, and you're just, okay, yeah, just had something to throw away. And he was putting parts of his friend. That's so insane. It just really blew my mind. I couldn't believe it. Detectives also confronted Paterson with evidence of multiple transactions he had made with the Cash for Gold firm. Jewelry that family members confirmed belonged to Annette, sentimental pieces she would never have willingly parted with, had been traced through those sales. Paterson admitted that he had been stealing her jewelry and selling it to the company, both before and after her death. The breakthrough came on the 1st of May 2024, when officers acting on intelligence searched a self-storage unit Paterson had been renting in Letchworth. CCTV showed him visiting repeatedly, carrying large bags in and out. Inside the unit, police discovered a suitcase wrapped in tarpaulin.
It's tarpaulin. No, speak English. You sound funny.
We don't say tarpaulin, we just say tarp.
So it's not tarpaulin, that's why.
We just say it's a tarp.
Tarpaulin. It's got pool in it.
We just shorten it down. We don't like that poolin part. Well, so inside the unit, police discovered a suitcase wrapped in tarp. When they opened it, it revealed a human torso concealed in layers of plastic.
Well, as you can imagine, forensic teams were called to secure the scene, removing the torso under controlled conditions for testing. It was the first hard evidence confirming Annette's death, aligning with Paterson's admission that he had cut her body into sections, scattering some in public bins and storing the remainder. The storage CCTV, once viewed in that context, became chilling. Every solitary visit marked another stage of concealment.
Yeah, and then when the police called the binman companies, they said, hey, is there any way? And they were like, at this point, they would have been incinerated.
Yeah.
And that was just so heartbreaking because,
either that or in the different cells in the landfills. I remember a case of a boy missing in Bury St Edmunds, and they suspected he went to a landfill. And obviously within landfills, not everything is incinerated, but trying to dig through piles and piles and piles of landfill to find body parts would be very tricky, especially well after a month of this person being missing.
Yeah, because it had taken a month to just piece all this together. This ain't like the TV show, CSI. within a few days, they found the killer. It takes a long time, and I don't think people really realize that, how long it really takes to investigate and piece everything together, especially someone who's trying to conceal things. It's just so crazy. But by then, Paterson had already maintained a convincing front for months. While disposing of Annette's remains, he carried on living in her home, presenting the illusion she had left voluntarily. He also cleared cupboards to make it look as though she had packed, sent a fabricated email to her friend Pat, and even ordered that Moonpig card in her name. Each act, he admitted, was designed to, quote, buy time.
Behind the facade, Annette had been reduced to bags scattered across Letchworth bins and a torso hidden in storage. The routine was methodical, calculated to erase her from Fairfield while preserving his own security in the house that she had once called home. The next day, 2nd of May 2024, Bedfordshire Police announced that Scott Paterson had been charged with Annette Smith's murder.
When Scott Paterson appeared at Luton Crown Court on the 4th of November 2024, there was no drawn-out trial. He stood in the dock and admitted what the investigation had already uncovered. He pleaded guilty to the murder of Annette Smith and to the second count of fraud by false representation. The guilty pleas meant that the harrowing details of his deception would not be contested before a jury. Instead, the case moved directly to sentencing, with the prosecution outlining the facts of the killing and the efforts of Paterson to conceal it. That's just premeditation, and that's in America. We would go, okay, that's premeditated murder. That's automatic life. You're never getting out, most of the time, really. But you premeditated, you planned all that, you're done. They lock you up and say, see you later. With the plea entered, the focus shifted to sentencing. Judge Christina Montgomery Casey addressed Paterson directly, describing the murder as a grave betrayal. Quote, you took advantage of her generosity and her vulnerability. Annette had given him a home for nearly a decade, providing stability when he needed it most. In return, he had suffocated her as she slept, dismembered her body, and discarded her remains in public bins. The judge said this was an act of cruelty compounded by deception, a crime marked by planning rather than impulse.
The court heard how Annette's age and health made her especially vulnerable. At 74, she could not have defended herself from such an attack. Judge Montgomery called this an aggravating feature, adding to the seriousness of this offence. Another aggravating factor was the calculated attempt to mislead others. Quote, you engaged in a sustained and deliberate effort to convince her friends, her family, and the authorities that she was still alive. The staged messages, the false descriptions of a mystery woman, and the calculated disposal of her remains were all cited as evidence of his determination to avoid justice.
The absence of Annette's full body remained a central source of pain for her family. Though police had recovered her torso from a suitcase from the storage unit in Letchworth, much of her remains were never found. The judge acknowledged this in court, noting that the family had been denied the possibility of a proper funeral or the comfort of knowing where she truly rests. Quote, the harm caused to those who loved her has been deepened by your actions.
In sentencing, Judge Montgomery imposed the only penalty available for murder, life imprisonment. She set a minimum 19 years, 178 days, and 187 days deducted as he was on remand in custody, before Paterson could be considered for release. For the fraud offence, a concurrent sentence was imposed.
Not long enough. That's 20 years.
Well, it's my view, life is life. You take a life, you do life,
Well, it just blows my mind because
Where's the deterrent?
It's a premeditated murder. He planned it for weeks, thinking about it, and he went and did it. Why are you giving him a chance to get out? That's so crazy.
I mean, it's a minimum term, so, he could do longer, depending if parole say, oh, no, you're not remorseful still or whatever, But
see, I have this feeling because he'd never had a history of violence. He never had any run-ins with the law. He was just a stand-up dude.
Mm.
And he did this thing so he could be a superstar prisoner in prison and get paroled after 20. And that's just wrong to me.
Well, I do think that UK laws should be a lot stricter. And I do believe that, obviously there's going to be mitigating factors to every case, but I do think if you take a life, you do life.
Well, in the days after sentencing, Bedfordshire Police released a statement on behalf of Annette Smith's family. They described her as a kind and loving and generous woman who touched the lives of so many, and thanked both investigators and the community for their support during the long months of uncertainty.
Well, in Fairfield, neighbours spoke of the shock that still lingered. Annette's absence had been felt from the first days that she went missing, but the confirmation of her murder brought a finality that many struggled to accept. She had been the familiar figure at the front gate, the neighbour who remembered birthdays and checked in on illnesses. It's hard to believe that someone who was welcomed into her home could do this, said her friend Pat.
The impact of her death reshaped the village. Fairfield's open-door reputation gave way to locked homes and cautious glances. Tributes appeared on notice boards and in windows, and a memorial plaque was placed in a communal garden near her home. Local groups dedicated events in her memory, a gesture that helped neighbours reclaim a sense of the community spirit she had embodied.
For Bedfordshire Police, the case was also a lesson. Detectives highlighted the staged communications, emails and cards sent in Annette's name, as an example of how homicides can be disguised as voluntary disappearances. They pointed to the importance of early digital evidence, noting how IP traces and transaction records have confirmed Paterson's deception. The case was shared internally as a model of how missing persons and major crime units could work together to unravel such false trails.
In Fairfield, the story of Annette became part of the village's history. The streets and greens looked unchanged, but conversations with residents revealed a more cautious outlook. Her friends still spoke of her generosity and warmth, remembering her laugh and her hospitality. The house she had made a home remained standing, carrying with it both the memory of her life and the shadow of what had been lost.
Well, guys, that was the story of the Butcher of Suburbia, Scott Paterson, and his murder of poor Annette Smith.
Yeah, that's a tough one. She was wanting him to take care of her a little bit in here and there, but she had gained some of her independence back. And you have that trust with someone who's living with you and that they would take care of you and help you and stuff, but then they betray you like that. That's crazy.
Yeah, definitely betrayed in the worst way. Rest in peace, Annette.
Well, my friends, please follow us. Also, give us a like, comment, give us 5 stars, anything to help with that old algorithm. Find us at Murder Most British on Instagram and TikTok, and MMB Podcast on Facebook.
We have a link tree for everywhere you can follow us down below. So until next week, stay safe and stay curious.
Bye-bye.